As we just heard, the conditioner treats end-stage kidney diseases commonly caused by diabetes. What we said is usually about managing glucose, but these drugs work a little bit differently. What are they? And what do they do? Yeah. So this is a relatively new class of drug. We've been using it now for about 7 or 8 years. And whilst, when we first started using them, we thought that they were a sort of just another option to manage the blood glucose, it turned out that when the trials started coming in, there's, in addition to lowering glucose, they have this profound effect on heart disease and on kidney disease, something that was quite unexpected, but certainly very welcome to see. And it really has changed the way that we think about that, what drugs to use for what people, and what we might be able to achieve with these agents. They still do manage your blood sugar though, don't they? So, is there still a place for anti-10 cc of cholesterol lowering drugs in people with diabetes? So it's really important to control blood pressure, is really important to control cholesterol. It's very important to control blood sugar, but we're now seeing through mechanisms that, to be honest, we don't really understand. We're now seeing that these drugs have effect beyond all of those things and can further reduce the risks, particularly at heart failure. And also, have kidney failure. Right. So why do we need to be looking at drugs at all? I mean, couldn't we be doing more to just prevent people from getting diabetes in the first place? With lifestyle interventions and those sorts of things. We absolutely need to be doing that sort of thing. So there's just no doubt that that's a good thing to do, a valuable thing to do. But whatever we do in that space, we're always going to have people for whom it doesn't work, people who can't make the use that required. And even seeing this in the COVID vaccine space at the moment. If you don't back it up, horses in the race, you can get stung when you run into problems or all the expected limitations of any single strategy. And so we certainly need to do both things. And the other thing about it is the diabetes prevention, and this really applies. All this type 2 diabetes, but prevention of type 2 diabetes is a great investment in the future, but according to our modeling, it's an investment in the somewhat distant future. And that's because in the next 10 years, almost everybody who will develop kidney failure as a result of diabetes has already got diabetes. They have probably already had diabetes for several years now. So the dividends from diabetes prevention certainly won't apply to everybody, and definitely are not going to apply, at least for kidney failure, for at least 10, or he is not an inroad into the increasing numbers of people ending up on dialysis and requiring kidney transplants. We have to do something else. Right. So it's a diverse portfolio that you're looking at. So the other two. Say you looked at a large lifestyle modification program for diabetes, in terms of intervention, a sugar tax and widespread use of these SGLT2Is among people with diabetes. What sort of results are you seeing at different time increments in your approach, in your projections, show? What we found was this wasn't surprised, but the drugs work quickly, within a few years of getting increasing uptake in the numbers of drugs, we're starting to see 20-25% reductions in the numbers of people ending up on dialysis now. That's of course, assuming that's the case that we did. We assume that 50%. So maybe even there's a 75% of people who are sort of being down the track towards kidney problems. We're getting onto these medications and staying over. Whether that happens in reality is another mass. We were modeling what would happen when we looked at what would happen with the lifestyle intervention, whether that's a sort of a personal individual-based lifestyle intervention, or whether it's something like a tax on sugar, sweetened beverages. It took 10-15 years before we started seeing a benefit. Now, I saw was that after the first 5 to 10 years of increasing benefits for the medication use, that started to plateau off as it was sort of somewhat overwhelmed by increasing numbers of people with diabetes. And so that really tells us that it has to be a package deal, that we need both components of this. We need to treat people who have diabetes, and we need to do everything that we can to prevent future people developing type 2 diabetes, because we are seeing an upward tick in the trajectory of diabetes incidence in Australia. What's the status of these drugs at the moment in terms of who they are approved for? Well, at the moment we have these approved. Those just changed in the last few weeks. We're now seeing these approved for use in people with diabetes, with type 2 diabetes, and with already some degree of kidney dysfunction. Unfortunately, at this stage that is not all backed up by Medicare. So for access to these drugs for Medicare of the moment, it's only possible for people whose blood sugar control is not good enough. And that really brings us to this sort of paradigm shift that we have. These are drugs that work for preventing kidney failure and also heart failure in people with diabetes. Seem to do that irrespective of their overall blood sugar control, but at the moment, we are so restricting. We can only use them in people whose blood sugar control